I couldn't help but think, examining a prop bet on Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs game this past weekend, of my favorite degenerate gambling movie of all time. Of course, the original version, not the Mark Wahlberg facsimile that came out and sequel that came out years later, kind of changed things around. But the brilliant James Caan with Lauren Hutton in the original version of The Gambler goes to Las Vegas, and he's got a couple of college basketball games in the bag. He's figuring he can't wait to get back and collect the money that he desperately needs from his bookmaker. Bookmaker knocks on the door. He's got a baseball bat with him. He says, "You got my money?" Actually, he says, What money?" He says, you lost those two basketball games." He was leading by 30 points in both games at halftime. He said, "Well, what are you talking about? They lost? That's impossible. They were up 30 points." And the guy looks at Axel Fried, James Caan, and says, "Axel, they don't pay off at halftime." Now they might, but in this case, you had a prop bet with Patrick Mahomes over under 30 yards rushing in the ball game this past weekend, and he's over under 19 yards rushing, and he's at 30 yards rushing. Before he does these three kneel downs at the end of the game, where he loses 5, 4, and 4 yards on three subsequent kneel downs, loses 13 yards to his overall rushing total, and it finishes up at the under. I mean, imagine that. You're well over. You've got this thing covered. I think, though, with prop bets, maybe it's time they instituted and initiated a new stat where that didn't count against the guy's rushing total. It seemed like a cruel way to be beaten. But anyway, well, welcome to Bury Your Bookie. I'm Jeff Deforrest. Good to have you guys with us. We've got Scotty M standing by here, and the boys were on fire last week to the tune of 9-2 overall in the selections we gave out, college and pro football on the show. Many things happening, and if you're betting, Bet Online is the place to go. They're the world's most trusted betting platform, your number one choice for everything football. They have every stat, every matchup, even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games, and they have all kinds of great contests throughout the season as well, so you can take advantage of that, win a big pot of cash. When the game's over, head to the online casino. You can play poker, you can play blackjack, you can get involved in over 150 slot games they make available to you. Head to the website today to get in on all the action. That's Bet Online. The game starts here. Let us welcome to the program my good friend Scotty M. He's with us every Tuesday here on Bury Your Bookie. And Scotty, great week last week. Had the pleasure of being on your own podcast that you do, Get the Edge, which is distributed all over the world and is red hot right now.
Yes,
You
sir.
guys were on fire. I sound like Lee Pete from the old Proline show. You guys were on fire last week, but had a very good week at a time where it seems like it's difficult to get a grip on exactly what's going on, both in college and pro football. I don't know that we've seen a clear-cut definition of many things yet, but a few things are happening that have turned out to be very profitable in terms of trends.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, like I said, at this time of the year, guys, you got to be very particular on what you're doing. You can't just chase after all these games. It's they make tough numbers on these games, especially early in the season. But there are numbers out there that are weak, and you got to take advantage of opportunities. We had a great college football weekend. The colleges were great. I was a little off on the pros, but I did have Pittsburgh as my biggest play at all of all of them. Played them on the money line against the Chargers. I knew Herbert was a little banged up against that defense and the way the Steelers and Fields is playing right now. He's really managing that team extremely well. When you have that kind of defense behind you, you don't need too much offense, it seems like, with the Steelers. But could you imagine the Steelers 3-0 after the first three games of the season? Unbelievable.
We said this when we were talking on your show with the two other gentlemen that do the show with you, Ted and TK, both outstanding handicappers in their own right. But I believe it to be true that nobody does more with less than Mike Tomlin in terms of coaching. And that what was one of the reasons that we were embracing wildly the bet of our lifetime against the Miami Dolphins in their game against the Seahawks, laying at post time only 4 points in a game that figured and loomed as a blowout all the way around, because
Yeah,
Mike
who's on that?
McDaniel
Who's
is
on
not
that?
in that category of being able to lift a team up from his coaching prowess, whatever it is. He's got a formula that's wild, and it looks like they're playing in a pinball machine when the offense is clicking, but it hasn't been so far this year. And he seems like he is not capable of changing direction or philosophies, much like Tomlin finds a way to slow down the pace of these games defensively and grind out victories.
Yeah, I mean, look at what Tomlin's doing. I mean, over never had a losing season in all his years. Obviously, had great players. He's had a lot to manage there, but unbelievable start for them. No one picked them, including myself, to be 3-0 in the first three games of the year. But they just, like I said, when you got a super defense like that, I mean, right now they're playing on all levels. Even the offense is getting the job done enough to win the games, but the defense is carrying that team. And when you have all those weapons on both sides of the ball, it makes it a lot easier. And they're in first place in that division.
Yeah, that comes as a surprise. I guess the Bengals losing last night and
Wow.
losing to the Commanders and Jalen Daniels. People had serious questions about Jalen Daniels, whether he's going to be. He appeared to be a reasonable facsimile of RG3. And the problem with RG3 was because he ran the ball and was sort of slightly built by comparison to, say, a Josh Allen, that he eventually was going to get crushed to the point where he wasn't going to. It's the old thing with Jerry Glanville. NFL stands for not for long, that he wasn't going to be able to do this. But he looked sensational last night. And Joe Burrow, who always reminds me of Andy Dufresne in Shawshank Redemption, Timothy Robbins, I think, will play Joe Burrow in the Joe Burrow story. But he looked like he needed a Dilaudid drip after this game last night. And I would imagine some of the Survivor pool players were all over Cincinnati thinking, no way they go to 0-3 against this rookie quarterback. And the kid looks sensational so far.
Oh yeah, he looked dynamite last night. He looked all world last night. I mean, he looked like the Joe Burrow of a year or two ago. When Joe Burrow was lighting it up. But yeah,
Yeah.
this up with Burrow. I don't know. I don't know if that team is just not gelling. Obviously, they're not gelling right, or there's some personality problems there because they just look bad right now. I mean, they look good against Kansas City. I thought they would play pretty well last night. I actually liked the over in that game, the total points. So that was like stealing some money there with the total.
Yes.
But Burrow right now, just I don't know. There's just something missing there, and obviously it's showing with an 0-3 record. And like you said, Daniels, man, he looked all world last night. He was tremendous, running the ball, throwing the ball, just making the right play calls at the right time, and moving kept the ball driving down the field, keeping Cincinnati off the field. That's a key. And they really dominated that game. I mean, it was a 5-point game, but they were really the much better of the two teams last night, definitely.
Yeah, had a little daylight most of the game. Two-score game, as they call it. I'm not a big fan of the term because what two scores? Two field goals? What are we talking about here? I guess they're talking touchdown and a field goal at least.
Yeah.
But the fourth down conversions, a couple of plays that he made, some of the passes were
At four,
literally sensational. So very, very encouraging if you're a Commander fan who, I mean, they were life and death to get out of that game. If it wasn't for Graham Gano getting hurt and pulling a hamstring with that feint move that Marino used to make when a guy's about to return a kick for a touchdown. Or in Marino's case, it would be an interception. Remember, he used to like sort of jog to the corner and
yeah,
act like he was going to tackle a guy. Graham Gano gets hurt in that Commanders game a couple of weeks ago, the kicker for the Giants.
right.
And then they have no kicker. Otherwise, they beat the Commanders, who then turn around and go on the road and knock off the Cincinnati Bengals, who were absolutely desperate at this point. Here's a stat for you, Scotty M, and I don't know if you're cashing on this one. I know that the underdog players, and I was pounded for my opinion that betting preseason football is a serious mistake and maybe something that is only for the criminally deranged to do in terms of degeneracy. But then people reminded me that unders were a sensational play in the preseason this year, that they went something like 26-6
Right, right.
on the season. Here's one for you. This comes from a good friend of ours who sends it in large quantities. NFL underdogs of 5.5 points or more are 14-2 against the spread right now, and 10 wins straight up, 5-0 straight up in week number 3.
Wow.
So, I mean, usually you look at that, and if you see a 7-point spread, that's fairly substantial in the National Football League with the parity. And you're thinking these are your blowout games. That those teams are routinely taking a pounding, like the clubbing of seals, and any of the chalk players are being carried out of casinos in body bags if they're not playing into or with this trend.
Well, it's like anything else with the NFL. Any given Sunday, anybody can beat anybody. You see it every week. I mean, you shake your head. You say, how does this team play so poorly one week, and the next week they come back and dominate? I mean, that's why it's tough to beat these point spreads, and you got to be careful. And I always tell guys, listen, you got to look for the edge. You got to look for games that make sense. Not that everyone knows which games make sense, but certain matchups, certain situations, you want to take advantage of those type of plays. That's why I do it for a living. I mean, I'm not out there betting 16 games on a Sunday, plus all the totals and chasing the games, live betting and all this, like all these other people are doing out there. But you got to pick your spots because I'll tell you, they make these numbers so damn tough, and you got to really look like the games I like this weekend in the NFL. The numbers are really tight on them, but I really like the way the teams are playing, and I really think I have an edge based on it. But if you look at the lines, not many big favorites in the NFL. Every game's kind of like 7 or less, which is shows you the parity going on in the NFL.
No doubt about it. All right, we're going to get into your selections. You have a college play for us and a couple of pro plays. But should there be, I started out talking about Axel Fried and the Gambler, and they don't pay off at halftime, although now they do pay off at halftime, and people are betting and sending in large denominations of capital, betting first quarter scores and halftime scores, no points before 4 minutes, a goose eggs at 4 minutes. That was always one of my favorites. As I was in a bar with a guy, and we're with a bunch of guys watching the Jets game many, many years ago. Most of these guys were big Jets fans, and this one guy who did a little bookmaking on the side probably was the world's worst bookie because you could never count on getting the money. He paid you on the layaway plan, like you had to lay away and leave him alone, and you might have a shot 3 years later to collect on like Super Bowl III. But this guy stands up and he's screaming. It's about 3 minutes into the game. Nothing's happening so far. And he's screaming, run some clock, run some fucking clock, run some clock. We're like, Scotty, what's wrong with you? It's like 3 minutes into the game. We haven't even got a pitcher of beer yet. And he says, I bet goose eggs before 4 minutes. I don't know. Have you delved into this? Because I was talking about the nasty beat. And maybe it's time to amend the statistical categories a little bit with all of this prop betting that's going on, because I never felt good about sack yardage counting against a quarterback's rushing yards.
Yeah,
Especially if you're talking about a quarterback that is going to be, rushing for a substantial number of yards, and he loses 15 on a sack. It seemed like these were two completely diverse statistical categories. But to see Mahomes lose the prop, the over, on his yardage of 19 and a hook, I think it was. And he's got 30 before that last possession. And he did that little dipsy doodle to kill some more clock before he went down. And it killed you. I mean, at that point, should you not just grab like a cyanide cap if you lost to the under on that? Should that not be a separate category, sack yardage, when you're talking about quarterback rushing stats?
I mean, I kind of agree with you on one hand, but listen, it's an overall play, and that's all part of the game that goes on. Whether he gets sacked or he takes a kneel down or he runs straight ahead. I mean, it's all part of the proposition. That's what you have to face going into it. And if you're smart enough, a lot of guys they might have sold out of that play when he was at coming into that drive. You know what I mean? That where he take a kneel down and lose yardage. So you could probably get out of your play. You might not get the full amount, but there's ways where you could get out of it, and you wouldn't have to worry about something like that happening. Not that you're really thinking about that because you don't think he's just going to lose 13, 15 yards.
He lost 13 yards and 3 kneel downs. It's impossible. Okay, if he loses 3 yards, you still cash your ticket. But no, it seems like that should come under consideration, that maybe they should change the way of deciphering rushing stats and put a separate category in there for sacks and have them count as yards lost via sack or whatever, instead of discounting the yards from your rushing total. All right, let's get into it. There's a marquee game. I know this is not one of your selections, but did want to take a look at it. And that, of course, is Georgia and Alabama, now ranked, 2 and 4 in the country. Many people, and we did have the professor, our Friday college football handicappers, doing real well this season. He mentioned as a preseason prop bet, taking possibly, I believe it was 14-1 at the time, Alabama to win the national championship. And that was based on a lot of things happening. But so far, it seems like some of those things are very much in play, including what would be a major step forward, and that would be beating Georgia in this SEC matchup. But what do you see in this ballgame? Georgia really staggered in that 13-12 Thrilla in Manila victory that they had. What was that, last week? Or yeah, well, last week.
Yeah. Well, the week
So week
about
before, yeah.
both of them.
What do you think? I mean, what do you make of this matchup?
I think it's going to be a dynamite game. You got 103,000 going to be there rocking, rocking. That place is raucous to begin with. Tough place to play, Tuscaloosa. You know, they're going to be jacked up for this game. They had off last week. Both teams were off on a bye coming into a game like this. They're making Georgia 1.5 to 2 point favorite on the road. I mean, this is a tough environment. I think Alabama is going to be jacked up for this game. I'm not really putting this out as a major play because I know everyone likes to jump on these like they call them the Super Bowl matchups.
Sure.
Take the toughest number on the toughest matchup. But I think this is going to be a great game. It's going to really give a test to see what these two teams are about. And this obviously has future indications of who could, possibly play for the national championship. But I think it's going to be a great game. The environment is going to be absolutely off the charts. I was actually thinking about going there. My daughter goes to Alabama.
Oh yeah, nice.
The sophomore up there at Alabama. She's going to the game, obviously, but I've gone up there. I'll tell you, if you've never been to a Bama football game in Bama, it's got one of your bucket list things you got to do. The environment is crazy and just an unbelievable place to watch a college football game. But I like the game. I don't really have an opinion, but I think Bama can stay in this game, and I think absolutely has a shot to win the game. Georgia, coming in favorite, but it's a small favorite, but they are on the road. But I think Bama's got a shot to pull it off.
I've never been to a game in Tuscaloosa, but I
Unbelievable.
have been to a major Alabama game. Of course, they played in the Sugar Bowl against the Hurricanes in a year where the Hurricanes, I believe, were big favorites over Alabama. Gene Stallings was the coach,
Oh yeah.
and Dennis Erickson was coaching the Hurricanes. And the crowd was largely Alabama travels very well. That was one of the things about the Hurricanes, even when they were winning championships, is they didn't bring as many people on the road. New Orleans is literally swamped, no pun intended there, but swamped with Alabama fans
Oh yeah.
who could not have been any more scary as a collective group. Scotty M. And then even Dennis Erickson's son got punched on the way out, despite the fact that Alabama won the game. Their fans were so outrageous that
Not even.
Dennis Erickson's son is coming down an escalator, exiting the Superdome at the time it was called, and somebody socks him right in the face because he was saying something that he didn't consider to be particularly flattering about the game, which was a blowout all the way. But yeah, it was a little frightening. It was almost as frightening as coming in and out of Clemson with the basketball team one year where I would have to say I don't know that racism was in play, but being on a bus full of black kids when we were rolling into the arena there, Little John Coliseum, wasn't necessarily like a favorable situation either. So yeah, kind of strange. I'd be a little leery of going to Alabama, and I don't like to eat raccoon. I don't know. How's your daughter faring there?
Oh,
Is she selling pics? What is she doing?
no,
Because
no.
all these kids are sending it in, Scotty M.
She's actually not selling picks. Thank only one expert in the family per family with that. But no, she loves it up there. I mean, she's having the time of her life, and God bless her. She enjoys it. And just a great environment. Like I said, I've been to every event there is, like yourself. I've been from horse racing to Breeders' Cups to boxing to World Championship fights, Super Bowls, World
Sure.
Stanley Cups. That ranks up there. Tuscaloosa with a big matchup on a Saturday ranks right up with any of them.
Oh, especially Georgia. Uh, will there be stills in the parking lot? Have you been to one of these games? They're actually making moonshine in the parking lot at an Alabama game in Tuscaloosa. What level of hillbillyism are we seeing there?
Oh yeah, no, they get into it. All the fraternities, like as you're walking towards the stadium, they have one after another. These mansion houses, one after another. It's just an unbelievable vibe. Excuse me, unbelievable vibe.
All right, we're going to get into your selections here. Do you like either side in this Alabama Georgia game as an unofficial play?
Now,
Just an opinion on the game in general.
not really. Like I said, this is a type of matchup I wouldn't get involved in. I think Bama has a shot, obviously, because I think they're going to match up well against Georgia. That week off is going to help both teams, obviously. But I think Bama can play with the team like Georgia at this point in time. As the season progresses, we'll see. But this is going to be a nice marquee to see, who's going to move forward for that national championship run. You got the number 2 team and the number 4 team in the country. I think Texas right now is number 1. But I do love a game on Saturday, and it's one of these games you scratch your head. It's the Arkansas and Texas A&M game, and that's an unbelievable place to play in. Very tough place, the 12th man down there with the Aggies in Texas. But I love Arkansas in this matchup. I'm looking at numbers. I'm a numbers guy. I looked at this game. When I looked at it, I said Texas A&M should be about a 6.5 point favorite. They came out about 4.5. The lines come down to 3.5 as we're speaking right now, early in the week. This Arkansas team is real. They just beat Auburn. I had them. That was one of my big plays last week at Arkansas. As
Yes.
a And I think Arkansas is going to give Texas A&M all they can handle this weekend. You got a ranked team against an unranked team. You got Arkansas going on the road back-to-back weeks, and they make a weak number on Texas A&M. I know they played a sloppy game last week, but still at home with that crowd and that environment, and Arkansas going back-to-back on the road, and they bring the number down low, about 2.5 points lower than I expected it to be. I thought this game would be a 6.5, and it came out around 4, and it's actually 3.5 and 4 around the country right now. I think the dog is huge in this game. I think they have a big shot. They're playing well. They just played well against Auburn, and Auburn kind of shut them down. So don't be surprised if Arkansas doesn't have a big chance in this game. I'd get this line. I would buy it up to 4.5 just to secure it. Get the line to 4.5, guys. Everyone can buy points. Lock it in at 4.5. That's my best featured play for college football.
All right, sounds good. College football, and you have 2 on the board in the pros?
Yeah, I'll keep it short and sweet. I love the way Minnesota's playing right now. They were a featured play for me on Sunday in the NFL that I put out on my private service. I like the way they're playing. I like the way Darnold is running that team. They got some nice weapons. Their defense is showing up. Yeah, Green Bay's good. I'm not sure if Love's going to play or not play. They're 2-0 without him. They could be 3-0, actually. They should have beat Philly in week 1. But I really like the way Minnesota's playing on both sides of the ball. The number on this game is right. It's a tight number. I like Minnesota. I'd get the line to +3 or higher on this game, to be honest. I don't like sitting on a 2.5 no matter what the scenario is. So I like Minnesota. I think they're going to stay undefeated through the first 4 weeks of the season, which is probably crazy to say that. But the Vikings with Sam Darnold will be 4-0 after 4 weeks. I like the Vikings.
All right, and the other game you were looking at?
Well, I got to ride with the hot hand. I'm going with the hot hand teams right now. And who's the biggest beast in the probably in the AFC right now? Mr. Josh Allen. This guy's doing it all. Look at him, MVP at this point after 3 weeks for sure in the league. Probably ahead of Mahomes at this point in time, even though Mahomes is 3-0. Allen's just doing more things for his team to win. They're playing Baltimore. Baltimore did get the win. They almost blew that game. They were up 28-6. Let Dallas come back with 3 touchdowns in that game. Kind of crazy. I think Buffalo keeps that running machine going. I mean, Josh Allen, he's just running that team like unbelievable right now. They're like in a zone. And Baltimore, I don't think's in that zone yet. They're playing. They showed up in the first half of the game, didn't show up in the second half, almost blew the game, could have been 0-3. But I like the way Buffalo's playing. Another 2.5 line. I'd get Buffalo to 3.5. And I like Buffalo, best bet. I just think the momentum is in their corner, and I see them being 4-0.
It would not be surprising to see that line shift a little bit towards Buffalo because of the way they played last night. Wow, I mean that was some display. I mean, it looked like they started slowly and they had that rough go against the Cardinals to open up the season.
Yep.
Came back, throttle the Miami Dolphins, and then come back and put on that display last night against what should have been a fairly imperative, a win for the Jacksonville Jaguars to avoid falling to 0-3, and they just annihilated them. So,
Well, look at the way they're doing it. The last 9 quarters,
yeah,
quarter of the first game, all of the game against Miami dominated. All of the game against Jacksonville totally dominated. The last 9 quarters, no one's been able to stop the Buffalo Bills. The only one that could stop them is themselves, and they're playing pretty error-free football. they're coming into this game. I'm sure it's on their mind. They want to showcase themselves on the spotlight game on a Sunday night to show, hey, we're back. And Mahomes, be prepared that we're back.
All right, Scotty M, good stuff. Arkansas, Minnesota, the Bills. Those are your plays for this week here on the show. How can people get more of your info, your input, and more of your theories and philosophies?
Very easy. All you got to do is come on TikTok, guys. I got a big following on TikTok. My official TikTok page is SM, my initials, Scott Matthews, Picks, Picks, SM Picks. You could DM me if you're a serious player, you're looking for private service, private help. I'm all for it. Just shoot me a DM. Say, hey, I'm looking to get on board. Or you can check out things we do. Our free plays have been winning. We put out a couple of free plays over the weekend. They got the job done. So check out everything we're doing. I've been up on social media for many, many years, got thousands of videos. You know, guys say, well, how do I know you're real? Well, guys, I got thousands and thousands of videos for years. Been in the business since the late 80s. I'm about as real as it gets. Whether I win them all, that's another story. But I don't think anyone's got a longer list of achievements as far as longevity than myself doing this for 35 plus years.
Always good stuff. Get the Edge, the name of the podcast there. He's on with a couple of really fine handicappers. And it was a pleasure being with you there. And Scotty M, a pleasure having you on the show. We'll talk to you again next week. Thanks.
The other man, Defo, have a great day.
All right, thanks. Scotty M, ladies and gentlemen, does a real good job. All right, we have to run. It's been a lot of fun being with you tomorrow. Troy West, who swept the board, you'll sweeparoo, break out the brooms. Troy West will join us here on the program. And then we'll have a special guest for you coming up on Thursday as well. The professor on Friday. He was red hot last week also. So stick with us on Bury Your Bookie, and maybe we can do just that. But remember, they don't pay off at halftime, and they definitely need to make a new category out of the rushing stats. If you could get buried on a play like that, maybe it's time that you took up another hobby. All right, we'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm Jeff Deforrest here on NoFilter.net for Bury Your Bookie.